Then about your practical exercise. First we need to get some integrated development environment, and did I download it? One other customization. I don't like these large icons here. You can change this view to different views. Icons Control 1, detail list Control 2, compact list Control 3. I think Control 3 is the most useful one. And then either you follow standard recipes for Java exercise 1 and you download latest Eclipse version from here, or you may be dissident and you may use some other versions. Particularly for Eclipse, there are different flavors or different preset configurations of Eclipse. As I told you, Eclipse is like Lego constructor, where you can add different set of pre-configured Lego sets of Eclipse. And there is pre-configured Eclipse for Java developers, for C developers, for PHP developers, and other developers. And smaller Eclipse with smaller set of plugins already installed is Eclipse for Java developers, and larger, which I recommend to use if you have enough disk space, is Eclipse IDE for enterprise Java and web developers. We will not use everything what is useful for this Eclipse, but it allows us to easily edit different files, including Markdown files and XML files and YAML files, etc. Better support for version control systems, etc. And Eclipse also is one of Java applications which is not fully platform independent. So you can write platform independent applications in Java, but depending on other considerations, you may implement your Java applications in platform dependent mode, and Eclipse is one of such applications. It is platform dependent, and if you use Microsoft Windows, MacOS or Linux, for x86 compatible processors, which means IBM PC, 64-bit processors, or ARM architecture, 64-bit version for Linux is this one. So you download this particular Eclipse, and I think that here this link goes to Eclipse Java Enterprise Edition for x86-64. That means IBM PC compatible hardware with 64-bit processor. Again, here you see that particularly for Eclipse, 32-bit operating systems are not supported anymore. So if somebody of you still have Microsoft Windows for 32-bit version, my recommendation is to switch to 64-bit version of Linux on your computer. What is not so good about 64-bit applications is that smallest amount of data they are considering are 64 bits. So what means this bitness of processor? This means how many bits can be handled at once with different kind of binary operations like AND, or exclusive, or not, blah blah blah. And on top of that you can then make operations for multiplication, for adding, etc. So for 32-bit processor, here in parallel you can handle only 32 bits. For 64-bit processor you have 32 bits more to handle at once. So that's good, because if you need to handle large amount of data, sooner or later you need to deal with larger amount of data. But problem is if you need to deal with smaller numbers, like just byte, which is 8 bits, something like this, or 16 bits. 8 bits should be 4, so here is 8 bits, here is 16 bits. If you do not use proper compression for your binary files, they just take more data on hard disk. And it was very typical for Microsoft Windows when they switched to 64-bit versions. All these binary files were approximately twice as large as for 32 bits, because they couldn't manage to get good compression algorithms to organize these executables in such a way that if smaller numbers are actually used, that they take less disk space. So that's a bad thing about 64-bit applications and operating systems, etc. That without proper compacting algorithms, proper compression, everything just takes bigger amount of disk space. So you download this Eclipse if you want to use IntelliJ IDEA, because you have some practice with that. You go to their website and download community version. It's not required for you to use trial version during this course. And if you want to use NetBeans, you are also allowed to use it. So definitely we use greatest long-term support version, this or that, but it is feature update. If that would be bug fix on ASUS version 12.0, I think nothing bad will happen if you use 12.4. Because and again it is platform dependent, and not all possible platforms are supported. Only Microsoft Windows on personal computers 64-bit version, Linux 64-bit version, Mac OS X. No idea about particular version. Okay, while these are downloading, let's start with one of these tools, which is this one. Definitely I do not recommend. So this is just archive file. tar format means to put many files together into single file, and gzip or gz extension is compression algorithm to compress everything. So it is just an archive, and for just an archive you need to extract it. I do not recommend to extract it in your downloads folder. My recommendation is to create dedicated folder for your IDEs, like IDEs, and you extract it here. And then you run it, this binary file, or maybe it's shell script, I do not know. Probably it's binary file. So you double click on it to execute, and if everything so far was configured properly on your computer, it should start. For newer Eclipses, it says that what is workspace? Workspace is place with specific settings for Eclipse, for specific Java configuration, for several related projects. But older school convention was that Eclipse Workspace is called just Workspace. And if you want to follow standard configuration, then this newer proposed one should be converted to older one. It is not so important, and if it shows your this welcome screen, then everything works. And considering that everything is done in task 1, we can go to task 2, and we need to create Java project for your exercises, and we need to download this archive, and we need to save it. And particularly in Eclipse, it works in the following way, that you go to File, or you can close this welcome screen, and then you see hyperlinks here. You can click on Import Projects, or go old school, File, Import, ... General, existing projects into Workspace, and do not select root directory, but select archive file. Choose this archive file you have downloaded into your downloads folder, and finish. And then don't get freaked out that you have Java build path problems. Only first 100 of 157 are shown, because you see here that project GTM is missing required library. What does it mean? This project is managed and configured using Maven configuration management and building tool. And how does Maven work? Maven work in following ways: that if you have your project And you have some classes here, and they may depend on some external libraries which are, and all, of course your project depends on GRE or GDK. For runtime it depends only for Java runtime, for development GDK, and of course GDK is already installed for us, so everything where we are using standard Java, all these dependencies are fulfilled. But we may use non-standard Java features for different kind of libraries, frameworks, etc. And for simple project, you could do something like this. You create your lib folder or libs. For Unix-like system it would be just lib, but if you would say that it's plural, many libs, it could be also libs. And then you add different kind of jar files or these Java archives here. Let's say actually I have never looked on JUnit homepage here. I don't know what Jupyter means. Okay. Let's assume this would be the one we need. Where is actual download? Ah, finally. So you search for this Java library, and one jar file may have many Java libraries. Library just means one class file which doesn't have public static void main method inside it. Then what do? You put this jar file inside your project. And add it to your class path. Build path, add the build path. And I have manually, not very manually, solved one of dependencies of this particular Java library. So here is one dependency of GRE system library, all these jar files for Java version 11, and also for one custom library, JUnit Vintage Engine 5.8 milestone 1 blah blah blah. But Maven works in the following way, that you describe it as a dependency, so that would be manual. Put file somewhere in your project, set configuration in your project where this library may be located. And for Maven, these dependencies are described in file called pom.xml, where POM comes from project object model, as far as I remember, and it is XML file, and here it says dependencies, dependency on this library, that library, blah 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 blah, and where these libraries are downloaded from. Similarly to Linux package management system, they are public Maven repositories, and default Maven repository I think is Maven Central, something blah blah blah. mvnrepository.com, but there are also mirrors for it, because most of these libraries are freely copyable, if you regularize English, because most of them are open source. And then for these dependencies entries, it downloads these jar files from this repository, and it doesn't put into local folder of lib or libs in your project, but in so-called Maven repository, which is .m2 repository blah 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 in your home folder. And by home folder I mean your customized unique home, not home, because if you work with several projects, probability that these dependencies will overlap is very large, so all these dependencies are not put inside folder of your actual project, but here, and then your project references to them in this Maven repository. So if you go here in your file manager and see hidden files and folders, Ctrl H here in as a hotkey combination. So in Unix-like systems, hidden files and folders do not have specific attribute, and that is accident, but actually it's security feature. But the name starts with dot. Therefore, in jargon, these are called so-called dot files and dot folders, which means different local settings for your user, in this case student, are put into these dot files and dot folders, which are hidden by default. And one of them is M2 repository here when you install Maven, but not everything is downloaded here, and our Eclipse project do not know about these dependencies. And what we need to do if we are using Eclipse as our development tool, we need to teach Eclipse that it should use Maven dependencies to reach out needed libraries which are not reachable currently here without this particular configuration. And by the way, you can close this donate window here and switch to Java perspective. So we can do this in two different ways. We can go to preferences, and for some historical reason preferences are under window menu, and then something about Java, build path, class path, variables. Eclipse already knows what this variable is, and underscore to repo is inside here, so that's good. What is not so good is that if we will look, for example, on such file and folder, there is now this library actually downloaded, home student antler. It is actually there. But what is not done, this project is not rebuilt for Eclipse, So I think for this modern Eclipse, this first step is not needed, because Eclipse already knows what M2 repo variable means, so it is pre-configured, at least for me. If it is not, you can do it either through the graphical interface or through the command line with this command here. And then you need to rebuild your project. I think I'm going ahead schedule. So I did this. First it's recommended that I rename my project to unique name. So now when you know your given identifier assigned to you, you can rename this project. In Eclipse you can do it in integrated environment inside it. You go to your project, you say refactor, rename from GTM, and for me it will be U00. And this will not change anything because there is no other project which refers to this project. So that's one thing with what we had to do before that. And then we also need to do and change it inside this Maven configuration file, pom.xml file. We need to change it for artifact ID. Here you should be careful, do not mix similar entries. Artifact ID, group ID, you need to change artifact ID from capital letter GTM to U and your assigned number here. And now I think I can skip this one because my configuration of Eclipse knows what M2 repo variable is. And I can go to my project and say mvn, what it recommends to do. I think to clean everything up and generate. Clean project, recompile it, clean setting files for Eclipse and regenerate setting files for Eclipse. And now we see that much more Java libraries are downloaded and put into this local Maven repository inside your home folder. So, warnings are not very okay. It depends on quality of policy of your. Unfortunately for our project, warnings are considered not too bad things, so we ignore them. But at the end you should see build success and how much time it took and when it was finished. And when you have done this, you need to refresh our project. There is a right click, refresh our hotkey, here is F5. And you shouldn't see any compilation errors for this project anymore. Then if you use Eclipse particularly, you should work in perspective, and perspective is collection of opened windows which Eclipse calls views, or these small rectangular areas with tabs on top of them. Each of these rectangular areas has tabs. You can drag and drop these tabs, rearrange them, etc. So standard perspective for Java developer, which is quite good preset of perspective is called Java. And if you break it, you can say perspective, reset perspective. And then if you do not have enough screen resolution, task list usually is not needed, outline is not needed because it duplicates what you see inside project. And you see perspective like this. And when this is done, we can double check that project is renamed. This is done. And actual to do is to create Hello World application with class hello in package gtm.activity02. So inside this package we need to create new Java class, its name hello, and it should have public static void main method as its entry point. And inside this method we need to print hello in 3 different languages. And short version of this class would be something like this. Then you can run it as a Java application. And if everything works correctly, you should see here non-broken non-Latin characters for Sveicināti and non-broken Chinese characters for Ni Hao here. If you do not see them properly, then something is broken for your development environment, probably because your encoding for project is not UTF-8. So for modern Linux by default encoding of non-Latin characters should be UTF-8, and in this project we do not have specific settings, but we inherit it from our workspace, and that's good for us. And then as a additional thing, what you may need to know is what actually is happening behind scenes here in this project, because when you run it here from this menu, you don't see exactly that Java is compiled language. What did I click there? Something different. And everything looks like it works inside Eclipse, but we can do it old school non-integrated approach like in terminal. First we open terminal, we say cd to our workspace. Okay. You start from here, cd workspace your project. And then what is happening here is that in this project there is folder called target and classes, and then here are compiled classes are located here, and for class hello, actual compiled class is hello.class. And I can delete it if I dare to do so, and I run it, and I could not find or load main class GTM activity hello caused by class not found exception. Why? Because here I did wrong things outside knowledge of Eclipse. Eclipse thinks that it knows that this class was already compiled, but I deleted it without knowledge of Eclipse. Probably if I will refresh this project and run it again, it will fix itself. But what I'm pressing here? And if it doesn't fix, then other thing is you can clean this project from inside of Eclipse and run it again. And now if we check what is happening here, this class file was created again. And if we do, for example, maven task nvn clean, all compiled class files are deleted, so there are no any class file. Actually, entire folder target classes is deleted. And if I say nvn compile, then I'm compiling this project using maven building tool. And then I have recompiled all classes, in this case using maven tool. But I can say, for example, okay, I will not clean everything, but I can recompile one particular class file using just built-in Java tools, using, for example, Java compiler. And because this is specific project which needs to conform to the maven standards, class path setting should be set that other classes, if these are needed to compile that class, are located in target subfolder classes, subfolders, and destination for compiled classes also should be target classes. And our Java class is located in src main Java GTM activity 02 folder. So for example here, what we see here as a packages gtm.activity03 blah 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 are folders inside folders of our project. And starting from our source folder, what we see on programming language, starting from here, what is package is also subfolder into file system. What is before that depends on configuration of your project. Particularly for maven projects, everything should be starting with src, and then different folders for automated tests and actual application, main and Java. Here we can switch. Where is this sidebar? As a tree. So tree structure of maven project looks like this. And so what is folder inside folder in file system? Starting from root of this source, it confirms or reflects package inside package. But what is before or upper folders of that depends on configuration of this project. And you see that maven project is more complicated and different than, for example, test project, because in test projects there's only src folder and bin folder and lib folder if you need one. So you can compile it using just Java built-in tools like Java compiler, and then you can run it using Java Virtual Machine. So we call this class by its class path. This is package name and this is class, but actual location where this class file is located, and you see here that there is no .class. It already knows that it should have extension .class. Location is find out starting from this folder target/classes. If it's inside package GTM, there is subfolder GTM, subfolder activity02, and hello.class is located in this class path here. And when you have done such manual tests, you may be brave and you may run automated tests for this activity. According to Maven standards, all the tests should be in separate folder, so conforming JUnit test for activity02 is in folder src test Java, not src main Java. And you right click and of course you can look how this test looks like. So it's in the same package as a main class, but actual location is in different place because it's JUnit test. And usually when you package your application and ship it, you do not include JUnit tests. So for Maven project, shipping only implementing classes of your project is very easy, because you just use all the classes inside main folder, not classes inside test folder. And here you see that there is no public static void main method. It is just class with some name which extends config hello and test. But this extended class is JUnit test, and Eclipse knows what JUnit is, and you can run it as a JUnit test. So it still starts with public static void main method, but the start point is not this class, but starting point is JUnit library. And if everything is green, this means configuration for my project is correct. And main method is also implemented properly for this hello class. And then retrospectively we can go back to activity01 and check our configuration for this virtual machine or something else. And everything should be, if you followed instructions for this activity01 for previous task, then everything should be green here as well. And then if everything is green for JUnit tests, you are pretty sure that your configuration is more or less okay. You may need to review here some warnings. And we see that first username is not user00 but student. Remember that you should always use student instead of u00. And this student does not have sudo privileges. This is wrong, it has sudo privileges, but password is not student007. Oh, actually it should be. So you should check what are these warnings for these JUnit tests as well. And these are just warnings which can remind you that your actual configuration is a little bit different than for these standard exercises. Any questions or comments so far? If no, then what else I can tell you? So something about configuration, how these things are configured. Particularly for Eclipse, there are hierarchy of settings, how you customize your settings. Most specific ones are for a particular project. Again, these are hidden files and folders starting with .classpath.project, and these files are actually not created by Eclipse but are generated by Maven. I think for more latest variants of Eclipse you may say import Maven project, then these setting files will be generated automatically when you import them, but I, as an old school guy, I can always say mvn eclipse clean eclipse. So this means I call Maven building tool, because first word is always executable file, and I send additional information to it. First word means use Eclipse plugin and clean Eclipse settings. We can do it in parts. Or when I say clean Eclipse files, I see that there is no .project.classpath files anymore, so it shows that it deleted .project file, .classpath file, .vtp modules and .settings folder. I think these two are folders. And then I say eclipse :eclipse. These files are regenerated and folders if they are needed. And now they are here. So initial configuration file for projects configured and managed with Maven are pom.xml file, but you can create other files from it as well. So here we have some garbage regarding to IntelliJ IDEA. So completely proper Eclipse project should look like this. So now if you are on then continue. So these are setting files for project. If you want to reset them, remove these files and folders either using Maven if it's Maven project or just by hand. Then there is also settings folder in the project when you, for example, add particular Eclipse plugins for this project, etc. Then there is folder called .metadata for entire workspace and .eclipse folder for entire customization of Eclipse. And if you want to start absolutely clean Eclipse settings from scratch, you delete this setting folder, this setting folder, this setting folder. You run your Eclipse again. And by the way, when you want to run Eclipse quickly, you can create launcher for it, call it Eclipse. It should point to this Eclipse binary. You may make it nicer to choose image from this Eclipse folder as well. And then you have click launcher to this Eclipse from your desktop. So close this one, open perspective called just Java. If you have small screen resolution, you can close these views and donate view, import projects, And you can say in this case import Maven project because everything is already configured for this project. Row directory is workspace and this one. This is something new to me. And as an integrated development environment, particularly for Maven project, it works much slower because it does quite a lot of additional things here. It downloads additional Eclipse plugins for Maven as far as I can tell. So it is not required for Eclipse to tell explicitly that this is Maven project. It is required if you all want to work in your golden cage or wallet garden to use only integrated development environment. Because I mostly worked as a tester and still work as a systems administrator for some Java projects, not as a developer, I'm not too lazy to use command line tools outside the integrated development environment just to build something. Maybe this is some question about this, that if you say to use this as a Maven project, not as an old school standard Java project, it says that Node.js is missing. It is something completely strange. So what can we do here? We can delete this entry. You can learn it by yourself if you want to be a real developer. So when you delete here, there are two options. You can delete only entry to your project inside Eclipse or delete everything. And I don't like this particular advanced feature. Okay, so I will show you how to reset your... Let's do just old school approach without integrated development environment. So prepare settings for Eclipse, and then we don't need to say for Eclipse that it is somehow integrated Maven project. We will look on this Maven project just as a standard Java project, also configured for Eclipse to work. So instead of saying that this is a Maven project, we will import it as a standard Java project. Both ones, this test project and U00 for me. So in this case our development environment is not so integrated, because some advanced features what we can do with Maven particularly are missing, but I'm not very worried about this, because for me recompiling entire project in command line probably is actually easier than to do it in Eclipse. So, and to double check that this environment is not broken, we can retest our configuration. And everything still is green. Now about other development tools. So because this project is Maven project, and in theory you can use any integrated development environment you like. Of course all of these development environments are different, with different possibilities and features how exactly you need to do this. But so for IntelliJ IDEA, at least for this community edition, it's also just an archive file which you need to extract. And of course you shouldn't extract it somewhere in your downloads folder. It should be in some proper place where all your customized specific tools are located. Because I'm not testing different IntelliJ IDEA versions, for example to check that something works with this particular version, something doesn't work with that. And similarly with Eclipse, I use just latest stable versions for them. My folder will be named like this. And we need to run some binary file. This is not binary, it is bash script. So if you open it with notepad or mousepad, then you'll see that it is in scripting language. So it checks many different things, and then sooner or later it runs Java virtual machine and loads this class com.intellij.idea.mine as a mine class where it starts. So we I think it should be executable. Yeah. So right click, run. Okay. I don't know how to run it in this particular. I'm not using this actual graphical file manager in my standard Xubuntu. So if it is not here, you can run it from terminal, or you can create a launcher for it. Your life will be much easier. So you create launcher, call it IDEA, command to execute is this shell script. Also we can add nice icon for it from image files, from the folder. I like this one better. And then you do not have this problem that it can be, in this particular file manager, is not easy to execute it. It's harder for usability, and because this is also a closed source application, you have to accept their end user license agreement. In general, what they say is that they will use as a beta tester for their community version. Even if you don't send, I have read some issues that still some data are sent to the big browser or JetBrains in this case. Because I'm using Eclipse and I do not consider dark schema as something new and modern, because I used dark schema when I worked on terminals like 25 years ago. What I usually do in customization, I use light schema, because I do not want to learn hotkey combination key map. I'm using Eclipse, and in general that would be it. So, and then how do I open new project for standard IntelliJ IDEA? So remember, project was already created for me here in Eclipse Workspace. If you have not done it so far, as far as I know, and last time I checked, neither IntelliJ IDEA nor NetBeans can use this zip archive, what you downloaded here from these course materials, to be used and import directly. So what do? If let's first create a test project to see where is the default location for IntelliJ IDEA. Java 11 will be okay. And so standard location for IntelliJ IDEA project was something like IDEA projects. So you put this archive like here, and then extract it. What happened there? Something with problem with refreshing. And then you open this project. No, not yet. Because in IntelliJ IDEA, this refactoring do not work as, at least last time I checked it, as it intended. First, you should rename it. Rename to your unique identifier and open pom.xml file, for example, with this mousepad, and change artifact ID to your identifier. And then, not everything is cleaned in this project. To be absolutely sure, you can delete this called .files and .folders, so do not have some settings from previously exported projects, something like this. It's not required, but it will be just safer thing to do. And then open this project. And say OK, and you trust all these projects, and it automatically understands that it is a project managed by Maven. And here I suspect that IntelliJ IDEA is not using this M2 folder, .m2 repository, because it still downloads quite a lot of files. You need to wait quite a lot of time until this project is built. Yeah, go ahead. Usually we work at till to 17 in the class, because Accenture try to be nice for these who need to travel a longer distance to get to the class. But when you work from home, so you can save time for commuting, and therefore here officially we work as a honest 8 working hours in a day. That means from 9 till to 6. Of course, if you can endure it, you can work even longer. And so in remote class we are working from 9 till to 6 officially, with this lunchtime from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. So as you can see, when you use IntelliJ IDEA, you can almost get old while this project is ready, but when it is ready, the details of course are quite different, But what you need to pay attention is for src folder in this project, mine and test subfolders, mine is place where you put your implementing code, and test is where you test it. But in this case I created this project from scratch, so I will do what you shouldn't do, is opening the same project in different tool. So one thing is already implemented for me is in workspace folder U00. And here it says that they are setting files, pom.xml file for Maven, and these dot files and dot folders for Eclipse. But primary thing how this project was built, of course, is Maven, not Eclipse. So again, I trust this project. Hopefully I will not need to wait so long anymore, because these libraries are downloaded. And then here for activity 02 we can run it. As a standalone application. We need to wait more. Sun in Eclipse, because IntelliJ IDEA is much slower. Of course, you may say that by default it's much more feature rich, but then you are ignoring hundreds and hundreds of Eclipse plugins which you may install additionally. And so it runs here as a Java application, and then you may run these configuration tests, all tests in test subfolder of the project, and they should pass, at least on Linux operating system. So for those of you who already have experience with IntelliJ IDEA, you can continue to use it. This project is not so well tested particularly for IntelliJ IDEA, but as far as these tools are following Java standards and Maven standards, they should work in the same way. And if we are talking about settings, so again, IntelliJ IDEA also stores some internal information about project in its own dot files and dot folders. And for IntelliJ IDEA, these files are following. First, general settings for IntelliJ IDEA are in .config folder JetBrains IDEA. So here, if you need to reset and start it running from scratch, you delete either this subfolder if you have several versions, or just entire JetBrains. Of course, you do not delete entire .config folder, because here settings for some other applications are stored. And then particularly for the project, okay, let's show you a clean project which is not used by both. So it has .idea subfolder and name of the project .eml. So if you, for example, want to delete and start project from scratch, you delete these two ones. And then you import it as a Maven project in IntelliJ IDEA again, and start this project setting from the scratch. And then third tool which you may use, and this is tested the least amount of time, is what I'm searching for is I already put it there, is NetBeans, and for NetBeans it is script file which is installer. So you run it. Easiest way to run it is in command line. If it is not, so what you do, either you add executable bit to it, where's permissions, that it is executable, or you install it just by calling bash command line interpreter and then pass this script file as a parameter to the bash. Here we will not customize everything. It still has support for PHP development, JavaScript. If it's in your virtual machine and you do not have enough disk space, you may remove support for PHP. But for example, for web development, support for HTML and JavaScript is still not a bad idea to have, even if you write poor Java web applications without PHP. So then you need to accept Apache license agreements, which is open source, not so bad as for IntelliJ IDEA. So here I will say that I need to install it in IDEs, NetBeans. You may choose different. And Java Development Kit or JDK is my default Java version 11. Or explicitly, for example this one, but I will use default Java version. I don't know about this one. And if I followed instructions for this installer, I don't like this NetBeans and the NetBeans proper version, but I will not uninstall it. So here somewhere in bin folder you have, this is again shell script. In this stupid file manager you cannot run it easily, and it's not stupid, it's secure, because as Linux distributions are used more and more by different users, of course some of these users are not computer savvy. But this installer actually also created launcher for us on desktop. I will call it just NetBeans, so I'll rename it to such. So, and if you check on properties, you see that it points to this executable. It says also run bin sh, which is different command line interpreter, not bash, but just shell, and you run it. So we will open project. If you use it as a primary tool, then of course you need again extract this zip folder to some proper place, but because for me it's already extracted and some parts are implemented, I will just point NetBeans to this project. I will agree with that. I will not read this from start page, I will close it. And you see here again that this tree structure of project looks a little bit differently, but we are interested mostly about these things: source packages and test packages. In source packages you will implement your activities, in test packages you will test them. And when it is ready, we can try to run it, right click, test file. And what we see here is that NetBeans works in such way that it actually calls Maven command from your graphical interface, and then it collects these results here. And if you see, for example, build success, then everything for this particular test is okay. And for example, run this test as well. And you see, for example, here it uses Java home environment variable to say which particular implementation of Java it will be using, and then it uses Maven Surefire plugin for testing. So actually, if you will copy paste this prepared command from NetBeans and paste into terminal, it should work in absolutely the same way. So NetBeans is the less elaborated tool. It actually is quite close to the actual truth how it works, so it doesn't hide all these complexities behind scenes. In this case, IntelliJ IDEA is most hiding tool, which hides complexity, and Eclipse is somewhere in between. And so that's approximately how NetBeans works. Now about some settings. So NetBeans has build.xml file somewhere, but I don't see anything here for this project. So I have not used NetBeans quite long time, and I remember details. So if somebody will be curious about this, for example, you have learned NetBeans in university, we may investigate it in more details to understand how you need to reset broken environment, because sooner or later you will break your development environment doing different kind of configuration changes or tests. So usually possibility to reset your development environment to clean state is quite important thing to know. So that's about these three leading integrated development environment, and of course you can use anything else. It's not tested, but in general should work, because there is no anything hidden put it there to make them not to work. Only thing is that it's not tested, and if it's not tested because of differences in tools and difference how they follow standards, something may work differently, including doesn't work, will not work because of these differences. And I think that's it about this second exercise. How do you set your development environment? Any questions or comments?